I will never forget the night Akon started screaming. Not the kind of scream you hear when someone is frightened or in pain. This was something else entirely. Her voice cut through the air, guttural and raw, like it didn't belong to her anymore. When we burst into her room, what we saw wasn't Akon. Her eyes were black as night, her lips moving as if she were whispering to someone who wasn't there. I should start at the beginning, though. My name is Uche, and I've lived in Omonioma all my life. This story isn't something I share lightly, but it's one that the village still whispers about, even years later. Akon was my neighbor, a beautiful girl, kind and full of life. She had this smile that could brighten anyone's day. But like many girls her age, she was curious, too curious for her own good. The trouble began the day Akon went to fetch water from the stream. It wasn't unusual, most of us grew up carrying buckets back and forth. But on that day, she came back different. She was quiet, almost dazed, like she'd seen something she couldn't explain. "Are you okay?" I asked her that evening when I saw her sitting under the big mango tree, staring into the distance. She just nodded and said, "I saw someone." "Who?" She hesitated, then smiled, a small, secretive smile. "Just someone." At first, we thought nothing of it. But Akon began to change. She started disappearing at odd hours, usually after sunset. She'd come back with her hair damp, smelling like the earth after rain. "Who are you sneaking off to see?" her best friend, Chinye, teased her one evening. Akon only laughed and said, "He's different." It was strange. Akon had never been one to keep secrets. She was open, honest to a fault. But now, there was something mysterious about her. One night, I followed her. I didn't mean to spy, I was just worried. She had been leaving more often, and it didn't sit right with me. So, I stayed in the shadows as she slipped out of her compound and walked toward the forest. The deeper we went, the colder it became. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my chest. Finally, Akon stopped. And that's when I saw him. He was tall, impossibly tall, with skin that seemed to shimmer like water under moonlight. His eyes glowed faintly, like embers in a dying fire. He held out his hand, and Akon took it without hesitation. "Who are you?" I shouted, stepping out of the shadows. Akon gasped, pulling her hand back. The man, or whatever he was, looked at me, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. His gaze felt like it was peeling away everything that made me human. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice deep and cold. Akon turned to me, her face pale. "Uche, go home." The next few weeks were a nightmare. Akon stopped coming to the market, stopped visiting her friends. When I tried to talk to her, she just smiled and said, "I'm happy." "You should be happy for me." Her parents were worried sick. They called the village elders, who called the healer. But Akon refused to speak to anyone. Then the screaming started. That night, after we found her in her room, the elders finally decided to take action. They said whatever Akon had fallen for wasn't human, it was a spirit, a demon that had disguised itself to lure her in. "We have to break the bond," the healer said. The ritual was terrifying. Akon fought us, her strength unnatural, her voice deep and distorted. She screamed his name over and over, "Obayaku, Obayaku." The healer poured something bitter-smelling into her mouth, and for a moment, she went still. And then she started laughing. The next morning, Akon was gone. We searched the forest for days, but there was no sign of her. Some people said she had followed Obayaku into the spirit world, leaving her human life behind. Others believed she had been taken against her will, trapped by the choices she had made. I wish I could say this story has a happy ending, but it doesn't. Akon never came back. Her parents eventually moved away, unable to bear the emptiness of their home. Even now, Whenever I pass by the stream, I feel a chill run down my spine. They say Obayaku still lingers there, waiting for another curious soul to wander too far. So, if you ever find yourself in Omonioma, stay away from the forest after dark. And whatever you do, don't take the hand of a stranger, no matter how beautiful they seem. You never know what they might truly be. Please don't forget to like, comment, and please subscribe, and if you are being very kind, please turn on the notification bell for more interesting stories.